Alright, today I'm going to take you behind the music. I'm going to show you how I'm mixing my new album. You're going to get a sneak preview of the new album here. This song features Brian Ward on keyboard, and it features Greg Klinkingbeard on upright bass, both of who did a fantastic job on this song. Neither one have heard the song yet, so you're getting to hear it first. If you enjoy these videos, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And if you are watching this on Facebook, please like or follow my Facebook page so we can stay in better touch. And now I'm going to go ahead and play the song for you so you can have a chance to hear what it sounds like in its current state. And then after the song, I'll go into some detail as to how we recorded this and how I'm going about mixing it.
He's not a real bird and he can't hurt you. Just take a look at him, you know that it's true. I've always considered myself a running master, but I tell my therapist the big bird is faster. I let my mind wander and it never came back. My memory's failing like a train off the track. They used to tell me that I was sharp as a tack, but I let my mind wander and it never came back. I let my mind wander and it never came back. Eileen is real and she's my new baby. Eugene is trying to steal her and I don't mean maybe. I tell him to back off, but he doesn't hear me. Now listen up, young man, you're not thinking clearly. I let my mind wander and it never came back. My memory's failing like a train off the track. They used to tell me that I was sharp as a tack, but I let my mind wander and it never came back. I let my mind wander and it never came back. I let my mind wander and it never came back. My memory's fading like a train off the track. They used to tell me that I was as sharp as a tack, but I let my mind wander and it never came back. I let my mind wander and it never came back. You see, I let my mind wander and it never came back.
The first thing I'd like to explain is how we recorded this a little bit. We used a process called multitracking, and basically the simplest way to explain this is you have two speakers in your car in a car stereo. Most people are familiar with being able to move that sound back and forth. On some of the old Beatles records, if you put the sound all the way to one side, you'll hear the bass guitar, and if you put it all the way to the other side, you won't hear it at all because it's only coming out that one speaker. It's only on that one track. And so with multitracking, you have lots of different tracks. The way you do that is you have lots of different microphones. You have, I used multiple microphones on the drums. I used 2 microphones on the upright bass, a separate one for the vocals, and then you have the keyboards as well. So what I used to record this, I bought this a few months ago. This is a Behringer product. This is a U-Phoria UMC 1820. And I bought this because it did everything I needed it to do. It was fairly inexpensive. It was recommended to me by Graham Cochran at the Recording Revolution, and it's been a great product. I'll put a link in the description so you can check it out for yourself if you're interested. But that's how it was recorded. It was recorded by a multitracking. So after you've got these instruments all in different tracks, the first step in the mix process is you have to try to adjust the volume of each instrument. If you have a singer that's fantastic, but you can't hear them because the bass is too loud or whatever, the drummer's too loud, that doesn't work. So I go through the whole track and adjust those different levels, trying to find, trying to make it sound as good as I can. So one of the problems I had with dealing with these different levels of volumes of instruments is that after I started doing this, I had a hard time getting the cymbals down. The cymbals were too loud, and for a little while I couldn't figure out why that was. It seemed like no matter how much I turned them down, they were still too loud. And I finally figured out, we recorded in a very small room. I used 2 condenser mics on the upright bass, and so when I soloed those 2 tracks so I could just hear the bass, what was coming into those bass mics, I found out the cymbals, the drums in general, were basically just as loud as they were in the drum mics. So they were very sensitive mics, obviously. And so then I had a problem, because if I turned those bass mics, those tracks down to turn the cymbals down, then you'd be turning the bass way down, you wouldn't be able to hear the bass. So I finally figured out what I needed to do is I needed to figure out the frequency range of those cymbals and most of the drums in those mics and just reduce those. Fortunately, those weren't really in the same range as the upright bass, and so I could reduce the cymbals coming into those mics without reducing the volume of the bass or the frequencies of the bass. So that seems to have worked out fine. I found out that anytime you're doing any type of live recording at all, you are always going to have some what they call bleed like that, where you have one instrument bleeding into another. If you record the drums, for instance, a live drum set, and you put a mic on every single instrument, so you have a mic on the hi-hat, mic on the ride cymbal, snare drum, etc., what will happen is you will hear cymbals in the tom mics, in the snare mic. You'll hear some snare drum in the cymbal mics. There's just really no way to avoid that. So eventually, when it comes down to mixing, you got to figure out how to, EQ out some of those frequencies or figure out how you're going to handle it. But you're not going to eliminate it completely. With a lot of modern studios, they actually have each instrument in a different room, and you can see each other through windows, which I have recorded that way. But even with that situation, even with the best studios, for instance, if those drums get pretty loud, you're going to get drums into the other room. There's really no way to completely soundproof that room. And a lot of times you're going to hear, whatever, the guitar coming into the drum mics in the other room. So just kind of something you have to deal with. In those situations, of course, it's greatly reduced, but you still have to have a way of figuring out how you're going to deal with that in the final mix. So after I figured out that problem with the bass, had my levels, at a listenable level, something pleasant anyway, the next thing is I started messing with the sound some more. Basically, you start using EQ to reduce certain frequencies or boost certain frequencies. You go around to all the different tracks and you try to figure out, okay, what are the fundamental frequencies in this bass track? What makes the bass sound good? You might boost those a little bit. And then there might be some really unpleasant sounds there that don't need to be there, so you reduce those. You set up sometimes automations to automatically maybe turn up the piano during the solo and turn it back down, during the vocals. You add sometimes compression. Compression, what it does is it basically, when I'm playing the drums, you have a lot of different volumes there. Some of the hits are harder, some are softer. Sometimes this can create a really uneven sound. It's just hard to listen to. So sometimes you'll use a little bit of compression to reduce that so it's all closer to one volume. That's not used as much in jazz as in other styles of music, but a lot of jazz engineers do use that. They use compression at least somewhat. So automation of levels, EQ, and compression. Those are kind of the next step in the mixing process. When I mix, mostly, at least in the beginning, I'm mixing with headphones. These are some really nice studio headphones I bought about a year ago. These are DT 990 Pro Open Studio Monitor headphones. They're open back, which means you don't have any bass buildup as you're listening, and you don't get, all you hear is the sound of the music. You don't hear the sound of the room. If I was monitoring with studio monitors, which I do have, you're not necessarily getting a true sound, getting the true sound of the music, because you're hearing, if there's bass buildup in this particular room, then you're hearing the music really bassy, so you start turning the bass down, not realizing you're turning it down too much. So anyway, in the beginning, mixing through headphones really helps solve that. I've got those headphones, and then I also have a pair of kind of earbuds that I plug in, and I'll put a couple links in the notes, so if you want to check these out further, you can. So I start out with those headphones, and wanted to mention the reason I got those headphones. Again, those were recommended by Graham Cochran over at the Recording Revolution, and they're pretty inexpensive but very effective headphones. But eventually you have to listen on some other devices, because most people are not going to be listening to your music on studio headphones. They might be listening on their cell phone, they might be listening in their car. So the next thing I do is I take that mix and start listening on other devices. And usually what I'll find out is there are some things I still need to fix in the mix. For instance, when I listened on my Android phone, I found out the cymbals, again, were still too loud. So I started turning those down some more. The bass was too loud in the car, so I started turning the bass down some more. And the last thing I wanted to mention here is that I'm spending a lot of time mixing this first song. This was the first out of 6. We're going to do more songs, but those are the initial songs we recorded for this album. But my intention is to use this first song as a template. And I had listened to an interview with a Nashville studio engineer several years ago who was well known for being able to mix a hit record in an hour. And I thought, how in the world is that possible? I spend forever mixing. And I found out, he said, well, I find out what room it came from. I know what mics they used. He basically already knows. He has a template set up. He knows he needs to cut certain frequencies because of that room, or use this much compression. So anyway, he can do it all quickly. So again, with this project, we're recording them all the same. They're going to be done on upright bass with the same drum set, same mic, same keyboard, same singer. So once I have everything figured out for one, I'm going to save that as a template, and all the songs after that should go fairly quickly. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.